Welcome to the Eat Your Content podcast, your home for all things food and pop culture. I am your host, Rich Herrera. Just a reminder to follow me on socials on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube at Rich Herrera and at Eat Your Content. And a couple of programming reminders, doing Top Chef Season 21 recaps all season. So make sure you follow, like, and subscribe to your favorite podcast player of choice or on YouTube to be notified of that. Also, The Bear Season 3 is coming out at the end of June. I'll be doing episodic recaps of that. So make sure you follow along and catch those recaps when available. Today, I am so happy to have Chef Soo Ahn with me on the podcast. He is an executive chef from Chicago. You cut your teeth at Ritz-Carlton, Michelin-starred restaurants Grace, and retained a Michelin star at Band of Bohemia. And now you're at the Chicago's Adelina, as the executive chef. Looks like we're talking from your restaurant. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Awesome. And you just recently finished up on Top Chef Wisconsin, finished 7th overall. Chef Soo, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for your time. So I want to talk about your origin story for a bit, because yours is a little bit unusual, right? And I'm sure you told this story 100 times, but a lot of chefs have different paths to Top Chef through different ways. Yours happened to go through a few sand traps and water hazards. You were a professional golfer before you became a chef. So what was it that made the turning point to say, you know what, I'm kind of tired of walking around in the hot sun. I'd rather walk around in a hot kitchen. So what was that transition like?
Oh man, I'm gonna try to condense it as much as possible. So I played golf my whole life, and ever since I can remember, I wanted to become a professional golfer. And of course, during my time, or during when I was younger, Tiger Woods was like a big deal, and I looked up to him, and I wanted to be just like him. Worked hard, studied, decently studied. Not how I wouldn't say studied hard, but I got by. And I got into college, played a little bit of college golf, but unfortunately, I wasn't really focusing on golfing or studying. I just partying a little too much, being having a taste of that freedom got to my head.
Who among us, right?
Yeah. Dropped out, did a little bit of mini tours, and then I was fortunate enough to be on the PGA Tour of Latin America, which I was traveling a lot. It's usually 3 weeks on, week off, 3 weeks on. I did that for about a year and a half. During that time, I was just playing bad golf. I was just physically just so tired, emotionally drained. Like my finances were just gone. Like I would just not rock bottom, but I was just in a tough place. So I decided to take a little hiatus from golf, did a little bartending, a little bit of serving. This was in North Carolina. And I was fortunate enough to have a chef there. It was a sushi joint where he would constantly show me cool like ingredients or techniques that he was working on. And that kind of snowballed into me going into culinary school. I went to Johnson & Wales in Charlotte. And as part of the curriculum, you have to do a 10-week externship somewhere. And for some reason, I chose Chicago. I think it's just like the toughness, and then like the chip on the shoulder of being like second or third best compared to New York and San Francisco. The chefs here just have like a different, I don't know, tenacity and grit. So I decided to choose Chicago for my externship. 10 and a half, 11 years later, I'm talking to you.
Wow. So a little hiatus from golf turned into a change of career.
Yeah, exactly.
So living or dead, who would be your 3 dream picks for a foursome of golf?
Tiger Woods. I actually said this in one of the interviews, I think. Tiger Woods, David Chang, Anthony Bourdain. I know he doesn't golf. I know Thomas Keller. Thomas Keller's a huge golfer, so him probably, and maybe play him for a little back nine, a little bet of eating at one of his restaurants would be nice. But yeah, a couple of those guys I would love to play golf with.
That's fun. So let's fast forward to 2021 for a minute. You joined Adelina.
Yep.
And I read an interview in the Rob Report that said, I don't want my guys to wake up in the morning and dread coming into work. I want to create an environment where my cooks can learn and flourish and be themselves, and they can go on to become sous chefs and executive chefs. How much of that mindset came from your time at Band of Bohemia? I mean, to say that your time there was not pleasant would be the mother of all understatements. So how much of that time there shaped you as the leader that you are now in your kitchen?
I think it wasn't just Band of Bohemia. That definitely had a big part of it. But I mean, because, um, so what happened at Band of Bohemia was the executive chef at the time, he had some misfortunes at the restaurant, so he had to leave. So I took over the executive chef position, and just from what I've seen, what I've experienced, I just didn't want my kitchen to be anything like what I know a kitchen to be like. Like I hated this like dictatorship, like chef, always screaming at you, throwing things at you, and then just kind of like molding people however you want them to instead of them being individuals.
Right.
And I got a chance to build my own kitchen in Band of Bohemia. Like I literally like I think one person stayed, so I had to rebuild the whole kitchen basically. And I was like, all right, this is a great chance. It's a great opportunity for me to um, build a culture that's not like none of this like toxic culture, this like screaming, yelling culture. I think I've screamed in the kitchen maybe like or yelled in the kitchen like once in the last 10 years. Um, I just didn't like that. I don't think that brings out the best in people. I don't think I don't know, that's not a healthy environment to work in. So I decided to go a totally different route at Band of Bohemia. Unfortunately, some things transpired during the time I was there, and I got this job at Adelina. I wanted to do the same thing. I wanted to create a culture where people are happy to come to work. They're not like, oh God, chef's here. Everybody, look down. Make sure you don't make eye contact with them. He might yell at you. Like
Oh
I
yeah.
didn't want any of that happening. So I definitely took that to heart, and I try to create an environment here where the cooks and the managers want to come to work.
Yeah, you're not training employees, you're training your replacements is the way I look at it, right?
Yeah, it's like a mentorship more than like like a boss like employee relationship. I try to nourish them and try to help them out to get to where I am because I was fortunate enough to have chefs who helped me out. So I wanted to return that favor to all my cooks and my managers.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So on to more lighter things, and the reason why everybody's tuning in and listening to this podcast now, your time on Chopped season. I'm just kidding. Se- Season
Oh,
54, episode one. You were on
yeah,
Chopped,
yeah.
and I'm gonna pull a deep cut. Well, it's not even that deep. You were there in 2022, so I
Yeah.
thought it was interesting. I watched Chopped and in preparation for this, and how much of Chopped being on that show and cooking in that type of environment sort of helped you in the way you started your journey through Top Chef on Last Chance Kitchen. Last Chance Kitchen essentially is kind of a series of chop challenges, more or less. So did you kind of go in there and go, man, this is kind of familiar?
No, yeah, 100%. Honestly, the whole chop thing, it started out as a joke. Like it was like, oh, one of our owners, he knew one of the producers, and he's like, oh, let me just hook you guys up. And I was like, ha ha ha, yeah, sure, let's see what happens. And then that snowballed me into actually going on the show. And yeah, it's essentially the same thing when it comes to quick fire challenges or the Last Chance Kitchen. You have 20 minutes, sometimes 25 minutes to kind of come up with the dish with the curveballs that they throw at you.
Yeah. So I was reading in Reality Blurred that you don't like to watch yourself on TV. Is that true?
Yeah, I have yet to watch. So my wife like literally had to force me down and watch the Last Chance Kitchen episodes, but any of the current Top Chef episode, I have not watched any of it. I've seen like little snippets here and there, but I just don't like the way my voice sounds, and I don't know. It's a weird. I'm sure a couple years, or a couple months down the line, I'll watch it, but as of now, nah, I'm gonna stay away from it.
So no watch parties at Adelina or anything like that?
It was there was one, but then once again, I was serving food. I was like making drinks. I try not to focus on that. I try to just engage with the guests more than actually watching myself.
That's funny. I was reading that interview that said that your wife sat down and watched them all and was talking about what happened, what you did, and what could have been done different. Were you kind of like, yeah, honey, I was there?
Well, it's because like I don't know. I mean, we out of the hundreds of hours that they shoot us, I didn't know which parts they were going to use when they
That's true.
edit it. So I
Yeah.
was like, hey, babe, like give me like a little grading. Like how did I pass? Did I get like a B plus? What did I need to work on? And she's like, giving me little pointers here and there about what I should have done, but for the most part, she was happy.
Yeah. The way you came into Top Chef, you came in through Last Chance Kitchen. You had to fight your way in through 5 challenges. A surprise to everyone. I mean, the viewers included. I thought it was a great. I liked it personally. I liked the twist on there, and it kind of gave me that underdog to root for kind of feeling that the public loves, right? And I think going through that really endeared you to a lot of the viewers, and I think that's where. Um, a lot of people, came to know you and your cooking style. Because I was at home thinking, man, 5 Last Chance Kitchen challenges. There's no way. I was like, well, Sue, nice to know you. Maybe you'll make it through the next two, but 5 in a row. I don't know the records. I don't have the stats, but that's got to be pretty close to a record of Last Chance Kitchen wins in a row. And to get in. So, kind of talking about some of your experiences on Last Chance Kitchen, I think the dish that really solidified you as kind of the mad scientist role of the kitchen was that smoked Caesar salad. Walk me through what was going on there, because when you were describing it on paper, I'm like, what in the world are you doing, man? What is a smoked Caesar salad? Is that something you've done before, or is that something you thought of on the fly?
No, honestly, I nothing's ever cohesive in here. Like nothing is ever like, it's never like a linear thought. It's always just like jumbled. It's like a roller coaster ride up there. Honestly, I don't know how I got to the point of making where I wanted to make a Caesar salad, honestly. But the smoked part, that one, I was like just running around trying to think of like that extra little touch on the dish that I needed to kind of get me through to the actual show. And I found this like kind of close looking thing, and I saw a smoker when I was running around earlier. So I was like, you know what? Let's see if this works. I mean, like smoky Caesar salad doesn't sound bad. I mean, people smoke stuff all the time. So I kind of put two and two together, and I was fortunate enough to, please Tom's palate.
Yeah, you kind of talk about in interviews before about, especially working at Adelina, at a new American kind of Italian place, of putting the Sue twist on classic dishes or traditional dishes. Is that smoked Caesar salad kind of an example of the quote unquote Sue twist that you would put on something?
Yeah, I think, I mean, Caesar salad, we all know what that is. And
Sure.
same thing, like here at Adelina, we have a lot of dishes that people are familiar with, but I try to put quote unquote my Sue twist on it by adding like a out of left field ingredient. Like for example, our Caesar salad has yuzu and black garlic and pink peppercorn. So it's like the flavor profile is kind of similar, but there is that one little thing. They're like, oh, what is that? But I like it. I know it. I don't know it. So that's kind of what I try to do with the Caesar salad. I think the one that I made for Last Chance Kitchen had black garlic. It did have some kind of Asian citrus in it. And of course, like the smoke component, I don't know if anybody does that yet, but I mean, that was in it. So I try to have fun with food. I mean, I love it when people tell me not to do certain things. It's like, oh, you shouldn't do A, B, and C. I'm like, well, I'm gonna do it and see if you like it. I'm gonna prove you wrong. So I'm a weirdo. I don't know.
Now, Tom Colicchio has said in the past, in past seasons and this season too, I think, is there are dishes that come out of Top Chef that would never have been made if not for Top Chef. So, have you found that to be the case? Like, I would never have thought of X, Y, and Z if I weren't under this kind of type of pressure of Top Chef with the either limited ingredients or the framework of the challenges. Have you thought, man, I never would have thought about that if I was just sitting at home trying to think of new dishes?
No, 100%. Because, like you said, you do have a limited amount of ingredients. Sometimes that kind of helps me just because, like, you're like, all right, so I need some kind of acid component here instead of the usual, let's say, I don't know, I use lemon juice a lot, but we have other citruses or other vinegars here that I would have never used, if it wasn't in front of me and if I wasn't in such a time crunch trying to replicate that same flavor profile. So definitely, like a lot of those dishes, I don't think I would have come up with them if I were to be sitting down in front of a book or a notepad to try to like write things down. I don't think I would ever come up with them.
How much has that changed your frame of mind R&Ding dishes now for the future and for the restaurant? Has your experience on Top Chef really kind of rewired your brain a bit on that?
Oh, 100%. Like, I mean, I nowadays, like, I get inspirations from the weirdest things. Like, I'll be like walking down the street, looking at a color, being like, oh man, I like that color. What can I do with that color? And I try to put together ingredients that usually don't make sense. And somehow, it comes out to be a dish that's like, oh man, that worked. I don't know how that worked, but all right, we'll go with it.
Yeah, that's cool. So once you were in the Last Chance Kitchen, as you were making your way through the gauntlet that you had to go through five, by the time you got to your third challenge, it seemed to me, at least when I was watching it, that the chefs that were eliminated, it was Kenny and Valentine, I think, were actively rooting against you. Did you find yourself feeling a little bit of an outsider when you finally made it out of Last Chance Kitchen and that first maybe challenge or two? Did you find yourself kind of the outside looking in, or the outsider kind of looking in and trying to find your way in there? How quickly were you able to assimilate to that, to the chefs that were already in there, and then transitioning from these quick little 30-minute challenges to now hours, what probably seemed to you like a whole ton of time, not just the hours of prep, but the overnight of thinking about it. Kind of tell me about that transition between Last Chance Kitchen and coming into the main competition.
Um, I definitely think that the 30-minute quickfire challenges are my forte, just because I don't have time to doubt myself or second guess my choices. So the elimination challenges were definitely tougher, just because, like you said, you do have time to think about it overnight, and you don't get much sleep just because you go through everything that you did, and you're like, oh man, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Maybe I should have bought a different ingredient, or maybe I should have made a different sauce. And you think about all the things you did, and you're thinking about all the things you did wrong, and then the next day you're trying to like compensate for that somehow. And then, but a lot of times you don't have time to do that just because you already have like a menu, and you can't like pivot too much from it and stray away too much from it. So it was definitely a tough, I guess, like getting used to trying to do that. At least for me, like I could just because I like that crunch. I like that like short period of time. We don't have time to think. You just go with your gut feeling and then you just execute. So it was definitely tough, but I mean, it was nice for the chefs to always give me pointers here and there. Say, hey man, like you're not gonna get much sleep. I'm like, are you sure? I'm tired. They're like, yeah, you're not gonna get much sleep, but don't worry about it. It's not just you. As you can see, we all have bags under our eyes. We're tired just because we always second guess our choices, but don't stress out too much about it. So those kind of pointers, and they give me pointers about what Tom likes and what Kristen likes and Gail likes. So they're very I guess accommodating to me coming on the show as like a random 16th chef. I'm sure when they first saw me come into that room, they were they were like, "What the hell is this?" Like I mean, I'm sure they've been throwing enough curveballs already, but to throw another wrench in the the cog of things, I'm sure they weren't very happy about it. But I think within, I don't know, day or two, we were all happy friends. We were all drinking, we were all having fun and laughing about what happened and what's going to happen.
Did you find the physical fatigue or the mental fatigue more grueling as you went through the main competition?
I think for me, it was a mental side. Just because there's so much on the line, and you really can't make mistakes,
Yeah.
and you kind of like look back and like, oh man, did I make that mistake? Like, was that a mistake, or was that the right move to make that I made? So constantly like, having that downtime to think about all the things you did and that you have to do, that was tough. That's honestly the physical part. Like, yeah, it was pretty challenging, but at the end of the day, like you get to sleep a little bit, you get to relax and decompress. So that part wasn't as tough, but for me, the mental side was definitely a lot tougher.
The mind never stops going, right?
It never does. No, even when I feel like a couple of the nights, even when I was dreaming about challenges and what I have to do. So it was never off. It was never off.
So let's talk about the fish boil episode, which was your last episode and the main competition. Not knocking Wisconsin. I'm sure fish boils are great. But I think Dan said the quiet part out loud when they were talking about the fish boils, like this is going against everything we know as chefs to treat a fish. So were you kind of thinking like, man, how am I gonna do this? It's like singing a song but badly, right? Like doing a cover of a song but doing it badly. What did you think of that particular challenge? In a way that, okay, you're doing this traditional Wisconsin thing, but it's also kind of going against everything you know as a chef. How hard was that to pivot?
Uh, I mean, so we do have a little bit of downtime after I mean, we had a little bit of downtime after we saw basically torch the whole pot of boiling fish and whatever, potatoes and corn, I think. We all thought, man, like this is like you said, this is exactly what you get yelled at, exactly what you get fired for in a restaurant for
Right.
boiling fish. So we try to come up with ideas to kind of semi-boil the fish so it doesn't get overcooked, so it's not just dry white fish. Um, so we try to like come up with ways to. We were thinking like, oh, what if we kind of butcher the fish differently? Maybe that'll kind of help, retain the moisture. Or what if we, not boil the fish completely or cook it less with less time on the actual boil side? Like we try to come up with these like plans, but of course, like that goes all out the window. You're like, all right, I'm gonna do this, this, and this. Once you're on that beach cooking, you're just like you just forget all the plans that you had. You're just trying to
You're just trying to make it through at that point, right?
yeah, exactly. You're trying to make boiled fish not taste like boiled fish. Like that's what you're trying to do there. So that was definitely a tough one because I mean, honestly, I don't think any of us cooked our fish correctly. Like that's just my opinion. At least mine. I try to undercook the fish by like cooking it like a minute less, and it all came out like I don't know, not all of it, but like probably like 40% of it came out like kind of raw. So like that was like my plan, and obviously that kind of backfired. But I don't think any of us cooked the fish, quote unquote, or boiled the fish, quote unquote, perfectly.
Yeah. Now, your dish obviously didn't come together there at the end, but it did have flashes of brilliance. Gail said that your pineapple beurre blanc fish sauce thing was like the best thing she's ever eaten.
Yeah.
But Tom said that you misunderstood the challenge, but didn't really elaborate. I don't know if they elaborate off camera about what they meant by misunderstood, but what did you take from that when he said you misunderstood the challenge?
Is that what he said? Once again, I don't know what he said. So
Yeah, yeah. So I guess you didn't think about it all that much afterwards.
yeah, yeah. I don't know. Like it was such a difficult challenge just because like I like to pivot a lot when I don't see things going correctly, or at least like a little bit here and there. And for that one, you didn't really have any choices to pivot. You just because like you had limited amount of ingredients, and you're cooking for 100 plus people. So I think I just kind of scraped up what I had and try to make the best of what I had. Honestly, I, I I didn't have enough of the corn where I could make like a corn dish. I had like maybe like 7 years or something like that. So I'm like, wait, do I want to give everybody a quarter of a year, or like like a sliver of corn? That can't be right. Like, so I had plenty of tomatoes. So I try to make something with that tomato, with the corn that I had, with the corn nuts that I got, which I thought in my mind, I'm like, man, I think this could work. But I think I try to stretch my menu a little bit too far and made it too. What do you want to say? Like I didn't have like a direction on it. I guess that's like the downfall of that one.
Yeah. So when you got eliminated after hearing that the quick fires matter, right? The quick fires are going to play a role in judging. Were you at all surprised that you went home, being that the quick fire for that episode you weren't on the bottom, but that you were finding yourself going home instead of somebody's whose quick fire was on the bottom?
So once again, I didn't know that. I don't even know we just know who the winner is, and that's it for that quick fire. We don't know who's on the bottom or who's on top. That was the
Oh,
thing.
really? Oh,
No,
okay.
I had no idea, honestly. Like I was like, oh, maybe I finished middle of the pack or bottom half. I don't know. Like, so I mean, after Tom told us that the quick fires mattered, I mean, even if it didn't matter, I am still cooking my butt off. Like I don't care whether it's for $1 or $10,000, or if it mattered for the elimination challenge, I'm still going to try to come up with something cool and interesting. But so where did I finish in the quickfire? Did I finish like
You
middle?
you were you finished on that episode. You were at the top. You were the top two in that quick fire for that particular episode, and then Manny was on the bottom. So when I saw that you were on the bottom and Manny was on the bottom in the elimination challenge, I thought, oh, okay, well Manny's going to go home because the quick fires matter, right?
Yeah.
And Manny was on the bottom in the elimination and the quick fire, and then you went home. So I was kind of stunned for a minute because I'm like, wait a minute, I thought the quick fires matter. And then I don't know how much about Top Chef you read online or anything, or on Facebook groups or whatever, but there was a lot of chatter about like, wait, do the quick fires matter? Do they not matter? What's going on? I don't know how this show works anymore. So it was a little bit of controversy there that, wait a minute, they just told us the last episode that the quick fires play a role in who goes home. So, the only thing that a lot of Top Chef fans were thinking is like, was Soo's dish in the fish boil really so bad that it overlooked somebody else that was on the bottom in the last
Yeah.
two challenges? So, yeah, so I guess you didn't really have a chance to think about that all that much since you didn't, I guess, watch the show, watch your episode.
I didn't even know where I stood after the quickfire. So I mean, I guess I'm gonna have to come up with a petition about persistence.
Well, we'll see what next season holds in terms of how they redo the challenges and whatnot. So you're eliminated. You find yourself back in Last Chance Kitchen. Did you kind of think to yourself, "Oh, I've been here before. I can do this. No problem."
I did, but also, I mean, I think just like mentally, like I wasn't in the right place.
Yeah.
Just being like, recently eliminated and trying to, and honestly, the challenge that I had was tough, or at least I thought it was tough. I mean, obviously for the other two contestants, it wasn't, but trying to come up with the dish that highlighted all the quick fire challenges. And I mean, like, and when I heard that, I was like, all right, so I had to make sure, I mean, the hops was on there. I was like, all right, the hops, like, I can't just like, just sprinkle it on there, say that it's infused. I mean, I had hops on there. I figured like, I have to do hops a couple of different ways. Like, I just really wanted to highlight every single one of the challenges that I did. But honestly, like, I think it just kind of got jumbled in my head. Nothing got concrete up there. And it just kind of just spat out something that wasn't very pleasant to Tom or Kristen. So yeah, that was very unfortunate. But once again, I think I was just like in like a bad mental place where I just got knocked out trying to come up with the dish with all the different challenges. I'm just like,
Yeah.
yeah, it was that was definitely not my best showing in Last Chance Kitchen.
And then in the first five challenges, the first five quick fires, you didn't even get a chance to do or see, so you kind of had no idea what context some of these ingredients were in to pull from. You're just like, oh, I got to use hops, and oh my gosh, hops are bitter. What am I going to do with these?
Yeah.
So yeah, did you find it somewhat poetic that your Top Chef journey ended the way it began
Yeah.
in Last Chance Kitchen?
No, honestly, like it's like full circle type deal, and no, I don't think I would. I mean, I definitely would have loved to, move further. But honestly, like, I coming in, I had no idea where I was gonna go or where they were gonna land me in the show. And to get that far and go through so many different challenges and go through even restaurant wars. That's like a big, like benchmark in the whole show because that's something that never goes away. And to go through that, it was quite an experience. And to end it at Last Chance Kitchen, I have no, it was a nice way to kind of wrap things up, honestly.
I mean, I like the symmetry of it. I thought it was very nice. So what does the future hold for you? I mean, what does Soo have in his bag for what's next?
Obviously, I took quite some time off to shoot the show, and thankfully my guys, they held it together here. So I kind of want to just kind of focus on this restaurant, honestly, just to make sure that, give my guys ample time off or giving me ample time off. And also we are working on a new project. So that's going to be happening in the next like 6 to 8 months. Going to focus on that. And honestly, I'm just excited to see what kind of doors this Top Chef opportunity is going to open for me.
Yeah.
So we'll kind of see, as the punches come rolling in.
Right. So you don't watch stuff on TV, so you probably have. Well, have you watched the episodes that you're not in?
I think I
Do you-
watched the Cheese Fest one. I think that might be like the only one. I watched the first episode. I lied. I watched the
Okay.
first episode where Manny wins. I watched that one. I watched the fritter off basically, the
Yeah,
cheese,
yeah.
and I think those are the only two I've watched honestly.
So of the episodes you did watch, or the ones that your wife filled you in on, were there any challenges that you didn't do that you really would want to try, or that you man, I wish I would have been in that episode for that particular challenge, or man, I wish I would have stayed on one more episode to do the tabletop challenge or whatever.
There you go. You just answered my question.
Oh, did I? Sorry.
Yeah. No, honestly, I think that would have been like kind of my forte. I just love like outside thinking, like box stuff where, using the table as like your plate. I think that would have been a good one for me. And also, I also used to work for Chef Duffy for 2 years.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
it would have been nice to kind of see him again and kind of be like, ha, I can do this. Thanks to you, but I can do this. I think that would have been a fun challenge that I would have liked to do, honestly.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Well, Chef Sue, I want to be respectful of your time. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. I had a lot of fun talking about it, and I think a lot of my listeners are going to enjoy some of these anecdotes that you had about the show. So thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on here.